WVW Broadcast Network is pleased to present In the Arena with Gold Star parents Billy and Karen Vaughn. Billy and Karen Vaughn are the parents of fallen Navy SEAL Aaron Vaughn, who is part of SEAL Team 6. On August 6, 2011, Aaron was killed in action in the Tangi River Valley of Afghanistan when a chopper called Extortion 17 carrying 30 Americans was shot down from the sky. The day Aaron's life ended, theirs began again. The Vaughns have emerged on the national scene as powerful spokespersons for not only our defenders still fighting on foreign soil, but also for the freedoms and prosperity here at home so many have sacrificed their lives to protect. Through the lens of hope and grave personal loss, their message is inspired by the firm belief that a representative republic is the noblest form of government ever devised by man and therefore demands protection. And now, here are your hosts, Billy and Karen Vaughn.
Okay, folks, so with us now is Andrea Gallagher. Andrea is a friend of ours. She is the wife of Chief Eddie Gallagher, who was a dear friend of our son Aaron, and who's a dear friend of ours. And Eddie and Andrea and their family have been dealt a severe injustice by the United States Navy and by the government of the United States and by some people trying to make a name for themselves. And Andrea, I just want to thank you so much for being with us today. I thank you for your courage. I thank you for your family and for what Eddie has done for us. And I just want to ask you right now, how is Eddie?
Well, sadly, the phones have been down at the brig for several days, so I haven't had a chance to talk to my husband. These are typical commonplace things that we deal with now on a daily basis. We pay hundreds of thousands of dollars just to communicate with him. He's really being targeted, I feel, as a SEAL. In there, I feel like there's people that are running roughshod over the fact that they would never otherwise have an upper hand on controlling a Navy SEAL. So he's actually been bearing, in addition to all the other persecutions we've been facing for well over the year, it's pretty challenging. He's handling it just like anything else. He's going to continue to fight and try to be an example and a leader while he's in there, and that's exactly what he's doing.
Andrea, back in the summer, you had an experience that literally rattled your entire world. You had no idea what was coming later, but back in the summer, your children were alone at home when they were drug out of the house by fully kitted NCIS agents. Would you please tell our audience a little bit about that story, please?
Yeah, well, sadly, the morning started off very normal. My husband had to leave for work. I had a few obligations that I needed to fulfill in the morning, so I had asked him to come home around noon to care for our youngest child because our oldest was going to be leaving the house. So, we made that plan, went on our way. It's a little difficult to talk about.
Understandably.
The first time I knew our home was being raided, it was actually our middle child who wasn't at home. She was in Ohio. She called me screaming, saying that the neighbor girl was on the phone with her, looking onto our home and saying that my boys were in the street in their underwear, being held at gunpoint. And I had no clue what was going on. I couldn't put it together. I mean, we live in San Diego. There's a large homeless population. I thought, oh my gosh, is there like a bum or something in our home? Like, what could be happening? So I immediately left where I was from the meeting. I jumped in my car. I tried to call my neighbor next door. Couldn't get through, was making my way home. And then when I finally got a hold of my next door neighbor, who was an adult, she was screaming bloody murder into the phone. And she was saying, there's police all over your home. They're in your garage. They have your kids. They have your dogs. And I'm like, what is going on? And I'm just by this point shaking.
Of course.
And finally I could hear people yelling at her. They were yelling at her. They were screaming at her. At that point was when I discovered the woman that was leading NCIS at the time on this raid took the phone from her and said, this is, you know, who we are. Let us know what type of vehicle you're driving, because we had the street barricaded. So these people had come into my neighborhood, had barricaded the streets, had 20 plus NCIS agents in SWAT gear. For whatever reason, I don't know, because my husband had been locked up by NCIS that morning. He had told them I wasn't home. He had told them he had 2 children at home, and they still laid siege to our home and took our children out at gunpoint. And I, to this day, cannot figure out why the convening authorities would have let that happen. But that's what happened.
This is how they treat the family of a man who has served this nation for over 19 years at this point. Correct, Andrea? And
Right.
This is how they treat his family. They have traumatized your family. They have traumatized your children. This is an unspeakable thing, all over an accusation made, not just brought him in for questioning about it. This is all over an accusation, a whisper campaign that had begun about a year earlier after Eddie's last deployment in Iraq, where he was actually named Sailor of the Year in 2017. Is that correct?
Sailor of the Year was prior to that. What he was actually named on this deployment, Karen, was he was named number 1 chief.
Number one chief.
2, he was tasked to clear Mosul, and he did it in half the time. So when Mattis said, take the gloves off, my husband listened. And now, here we sit. More than over a year later, my husband has now been in jail for 13 weeks as of being taken in September 11th, when they took him.
Say that one more time. They arrested Eddie on September 11th.
Yes, I believe everything has been done very strategically by NCIS and the convening authority. I believe the home raid was done to shame and embarrass us.
Of course.
I believe everything that they did to our kids, everything they did to me. When they held Eddie for the 7 hours on June 20th, he had no idea what was happening. The NCIS agents, after the 7 hours raiding our home, they came in to get him and to release him, and they gloated to him saying, we saw your wife and kids today. Now, Karen, you know, having a son that is a combat veteran, these men love their families so fiercely. I believe that was a strategic move in order to just
of course it was.
infuriate him.
It sounds like Soviet agents, not like, this sounds like Soviet agents, not like American soldiers to another American soldier. A soldier has dedicated his life to defending his country. This is unreal, folks. Folks, you need to realize what's going on. You need to realize what's going on here and how they're trying to destroy our military. And if they can destroy the Navy SEALs, if they can destroy the tip of the spear, they've done it. They don't have to, I mean, it's mission accomplished. And these men who are doing this, and these women, and NCIS, and these prosecutors, these are weak people, pathetic people hiding behind a uniform of United States military who don't deserve to wear that uniform. Thank God that we are being protected and defended by men like Chief Eddie Gallagher, and not by the band leader prosecutor who is prosecuting him and trying to earn a name for himself.
Who actually said, this prosecutor, Andrea, I read in a statement that your brother-in-law, Sean Gallagher, made, that this prosecutor actually said something to the effect of, in Eddie's Article 32 hearing, something to the effect of, Eddie is the reason ISIS kills Americans. Something along that line. And I'm just, this is a man with rosy pink cheeks, looks like he's never even been in the sun, much less in battle.
Looks like a band leader.
And he does. He looks like he should have a trumpet or something. Seriously, I'm not trying to be rude here about the man's looks.
Not picking on band leaders, by the way.
I'm talking about the difference. You put a picture of Eddie Gallagher up there, whose face is rugged and worn and lined, creased, from sun, from exposure, from being out on the front lines of this battle for 17 years. He's been in every single minute of this battle that our nation's been in for 17 years. And then you've got this lily-faced, pink-cheeked, white-skinned man over here calling Eddie a monster. And please, if you hear outrage,
who's never been in battle, doesn't know anything about war fighting, doesn't know what these men go through, doesn't know what they face, who's never lost a buddy in battle, in an op, has never experienced this stuff, but yet he's deciding what should happen to our war heroes. I'm telling you, folks, this is beyond an injustice. This man, what is his name?
The prosecutor is Chris. I don't. The last name.
The hard name's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to.
Plavic or something like that.
Something with a CH.
Yes.
Yeah.
He should be ashamed. That's not serious enough. He needs to be dragged out. They need to be taught a lesson not to treat our war heroes, who we respect and who we love. They need to be taught not to do these kind of things. And those NCIS who pick on little children, little American children whose father is serving this country, they need the same thing. That's what they need.
Can I just point out the parallel here, Andrea? We've never talked about this, but as you tearfully described that morning where your children were drug out of the house at gunpoint by NCIS agents who loaded your whole street, shut access to your street off, traumatized, terrified your children. Can you imagine what CNN, ABC, NBC, what all of those people who cry and whine about what's happening to illegal immigrants coming to our border and their children getting separated from them for days until we sort things out? Why is there not the outrage about what happened to your children, American children whose father whose father has fought for this country? But let's not make any mistake about this. You've been his wife. You've been keeping the home front warm and safe. You've been watching your children grow while he has deployed over and over and over again. And I know, being the mom of a Navy SEAL, I know what that life looks like, Andrea. I know you've largely been alone, and you and your children have given your husband and their daddy to this nation, and in return, this is what you've gotten. And our time is up, and I'd just like to give you the last word here for you to just have a final say on what people can do to help, how they can help your family right now, and how they can help your precious husband, Eddie, who, as Billy said, we know and love personally.
Yeah, well, I would just encourage everyone to really think about what's going on in this country. And in regard to the treatment of our military heroes, veterans, and service members, it's an atrocity. I feel like we are at a really big turning point in this nation. We either have to take ownership for loving, supporting, and getting behind our service members after they come back, or we have to do some really big self-examination here about where we've gone wrong. The site is justiceforeddie.com. That's where people can go for more info. It has all the links to fundraising for legal defense and all other information that's being released. So we really appreciate you guys bringing light and attention to this. That's our goal, is to share this story in hopes of helping others, so that these agencies can really be held accountable. And we need more oversight. That's what I'll say. We need more oversight of these government agencies. We need a full restructure of, these entities, these people that are not serving our military members. And I just thank you for the time to share more about this.
Thank you, Andrea.
Well said, Andrea. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us.
I want you to think about the stories you've just heard from Bev and from Andrea. The mother of these children, the wife of this war hero, of this great American, and what they're experiencing today.
This is something that every American should be concerned about. This is not one of those things that you can let slide and think, well, we're going to let somebody else take care of this, because this story is another story of betrayal. But this story is the betrayal of somebody who we still have time to do something about this. Once these warfighters are incarcerated, and again, I'm going to bring up the fact that I don't think there's ever been a time in our history where more warfighters have been incarcerated for war crimes. And let me just point this out too. Don't want to get off track too much here, but let me just point this out. This is the longest war in America's history. We've been fighting an enemy that is not conventional. We're not fighting a country, we're fighting an enemy that we have to single out inside a country where they blend in. The bad guys blend in with the good guys. This is a very complicated, difficult war.
Where they don't fight it by any rules.
Right. No, they don't fight by any rules. They're not members of the Geneva Convention. They don't have to abide by any rules. And so now what we have is also this factor that's very important. And this is why I say everyone needs to get involved that's watching this right now, is because at any given time in this longest war in America's history, less than 0.5% of our citizens have been engaged in the battle. Let me say that again. Less than 0.5% of our citizens have been engaged in this battle in the longest war in our nation's history. That leaves 99.5% of us to criticize them, to judge their actions, to listen to what CNN has to say about them and MSNBC and all of these liberal media outlets. That leaves 99.5% of us to be armchair quarterbacks, watching and judging every action they make. And I don't believe that that's who the American people are. I believe we're people who understand a warfighter's heart, who understand the fog of war, who understand split-second decisions that must be made on the battlefield. And I'm telling you what, this 99.5% of us who aren't on that battlefield need to have the backs of the 0.5% who are, period.
Folks, President Calvin Coolidge once said, "A nation who forgets its warriors will itself soon be forgotten." The responsibility lies with us as American citizens to defend those who are defending us. Because as we have seen in case after case after case, our government's corrupted. Our military is corrupted. The people have taken positions, they've taken jobs where they can make a name for themselves instead of defend this country against the enemy. And in many cases, they're out to make a name for themselves on the backs of our warfighters, or at our warfighters' expense, or at the cost to them and their own families. And so it's up to us. It's up to us, folks. I know we're getting hit from every angle, but it's a fight that we can't afford to lose. It's a fight that we have to take on.
Thank you for being with us today. Billy and Karen Vaughn in the arena. God bless you.